China. China is a country of courtesy. It is advisable to maintain a great attention and consideration at all times with the people with whom we are dealing. The Chinese have a great variety of very peculiar customs. For example, when greeting each other, it is not well seen to kiss or hug each other, since they don't like to express their feelings in public. The greetings are made with a slight nod, although they are becoming more westernized, and the handshake is also increasingly accepted. But the hug or the kisses are not styled, neither between women. A meal, which we could call typical in China, consists of a plate of rice or pasta followed by 3, 4, or 5 dishes, with dinner sitting on cushions around a low table. Before eating, they usually give us a warm, damp cloth to clean our hands. Use of cutlery. In China, chopsticks are used for eating and taking food, but after eating, they never left inside a plate, but next to the plate. It is typical of funerals to leave them inside a plate. Don't stab or secure food with your chopsticks. Pick up by exerting the sufficient inward pressure on the chopsticks to grasp the food securely and move it smoothly to your mouth or bowl. It is considered bad form to drop food, so ensure it is gripped securely before carrying it. Holding one's bowl close to the dish when serving oneself or close to the mouth when eating helps. To separate a piece of food into two, apply controlled pressure to the chopsticks as you are separate them from each other. Some consider it unsanitary to use the chopsticks that have been near one's mouth to pick up from the central dishes. Serving spoons or chopsticks can be provided, and in this case you will never remember to alternate between using the serving chopsticks to move food to your bowl and your personal chopsticks for transferring the food to your mouth. Knives are traditionally seen as violent in China and breakers of the harmony, so are not provided at the table. Some restaurants in China have forks available and all will have spoons. If you are not used to chopsticks, you can ask them for the restaurant to provide a fork or a spoon. Don't make much noise when eating or drinking soup. Please don't talk when there is food in your mouth. And don't point someone with the chopsticks or play with the chopsticks. Chopsticks measure around 27 centimeters, and this is because they usually put a turntable in the center with all dishes, and it is easier to reach the food. The back of the chopsticks are shaped like a square, and the tip usually ends in a circle. In China, the square represents the earth, and the circle represents heaven. To take the soup, use a spoon. Use of napkin in China. In restaurants, it is common that if they offer you cloth napkins, but in many food places they don't have napkins. Use of tableware in China. Chinese tableware is known for its beautiful porcelain pieces. The technique used by the Chinese to paint each of the porcelain pieces is based on mineral air mixed with special oils that are then baked at very high temperatures in a special oven which achieves between 600 to 1200 degrees. Some of its typical paintings are enamels, lotus flowers, and motifs with dragons or country landscape, and more traditional drawings of the culture. Chinese tableware is made up of several elements, some very different from Western tableware. For example, a complete Chinese tableware consists of a large round plate, soup dip and plate with lid, noodle dip plate, large oval plate, Chinese steel teapot, wine pot, Chinese steel serving spoon soup, sauce bottle, pepper or mustard plate, pepper shaker, individual dip plate, rice bowl, teacup with lid, individual bowl, soup spoon, individual sauce plate, individual soup plates, and chopsticks. Another important fact is that there are two types of porcelain for tableware: the Chinese bone, made of quartz, kaolin remains, and bone ash, are very white and translucent, and despite their delicate appearance, are surprisingly resistant. And the popular Chinese porcelain, which contains the same type of material as the bone, but without bone remains, which makes them less translucent and are also very strong and scratch resistant. The Chinese tableware is distinct for all the tableware by its fine carvings that reproduce typical illustrations of the culture, carefully painted by hand and with delicate edge of gold paint. It is one of the most expensive. Use of glassware. The Chinese accompany cool snacks with fruit wines, and at main meals they often drink mulled wine. China has established a comprehensive drinking label which advocates that people drink wine at the right time and be moderate in consumption. In China, there are a lot of people, especially the elderly, who drink tea or hot water through the day. One of the most important parts of etiquette in China is the tea ritual, known as yum cha. It's widely used to establish a first contact before a meeting or during a meal. If we don't want to be served more tea, we must leave a little on the cup. Otherwise, whenever they see it empty, they will interpret that they want more tea and they will serve us again. Toasts are generally made with beer, wine, or some type of liquor. They are an important part of the Chinese meal ritual. The same things happens when drinking some type of Chinese liquor. They usually have their own ritual both when serving it and when drinking it. The Chinese enjoy watching their guests drink, known as lo wai. However, we must be careful because they have liquors with a high graduation like the erhuatou. There should always be a common porcelain cup for tea or hot water and a glass for wine on the table, and there are special glasses for Chinese liquors called matuai and wu liang yi. It should not be drunk until the host has raised his glass, nor is one ever served in his own glass, but we serve the other dinner, who will return the courtesy filling ours. Dinner's order. On arrival, one should first introduce oneself, or let the master of the banquet do the introduction if unknown to others, and then take a seat in accordance with the master of banquet's arrangement. As general rule, the seat in the center of the table facing the door is reserved for hosts. The highest rank or honor guest sits to the left of the guest. The rest of the guests will be placed from the greatest to the least degree of importance. The oldest member of the banquet also has a preferential place at the table. The seating arrangement is probably the most important part of the Chinese dining etiquette. If the guest of honor or most senior member is not seated, other people are not allowed to be seated. If he hasn't eaten, others should not begin to eat. When making toast, the first toast is made from the seat of honor and continuing down the order of prominence. Proper conversations. We should never show impatience, be late, or present ourselves incorrectly dressed, nor should we interrupt someone who is speaking. It is an act of very rude. It's not convenient to ask them personal questions, although they are great family lovers. If it is possible that they do ask us a more personal question, they are very curious about the Western world and all these customs and way of life. They also like to get to know the person they are dealing with better, both socially and professionally. This is your reason for asking somewhat more personal questions. The Chinese do not usually use a no or don't know. Rather, they will try to give a positive or at least a hesitant response. We should not discuss any business matters during the meal. They highly respect this meal time as a time for personal relationship. If you talk about business, let them bring it up. Superstitions. The dishes served to us must never be empty. There always has to be some food left. This means that the guest is satisfied. The order of service is from cold to hot. Hot dishes should be served standing on the left next to the main guest seat. Afternoon banquets are much more traditional in China. These events are usually held in the afternoon to have more time to enjoy them. They usually start at 5:30 p.m. or 6 in the afternoon. They are quite long. Let's be careful when moving and never turn our backs on a person. It's one of the greatest possible rudeness. The Chinese like to entertain their guests abundantly. We can see food for 50 or 20 people, although there are only 6 or 8 people on the table. Now, in the end, there should not be much leftover food, as it can be interpreted that we didn't like the food. The end of the meal is usually determined when the fruit is put on the table and they give us a warm, wet washcloth to wipe our hands. Proper way to eat a traditional dish. The salty, spicy, acidic, sweet, and bitter flowers are the most representative in China cuisine. Since the Tang Dynasty, the wonton has been consumed during the winter solstice. They are shaped like sachets made from wet flour, water, and salt, and are commonly served in boiled soup, although they can also be fried stuffed with pork or shrimp. The difference between a wonton and a dumpling is that the pasta of the former is much smaller and thinner. The Chinese mooncake. It is the cake that is eaten at the Mid-Autumn Festival, a celebration that pays homage to the moon and is one of the most important in China. Mooncakes are small cakes that are usually filled with sweet or savory pasta. Proper way to drink a traditional drink. The typical Chinese liquor is called baijiu. This drink is also known as the Chinese liquor. It is a liquor distilled from rice or another variety of cereals. It usually has a high graduation and has a tradition of consumption of thousands of years. It's typical to drink it when there are family gatherings, parties, or guests at homes. It's synonymous with the hospitality to encourage drinking by you. The more Chinese liquor the guest drinks, the more sympathy and sincerity he has.